What's up, trainers? I'm Diggory, and welcome to the first episode of Teambreakers Analysis. As you all probably know, the Treble Double Drafts off-season event titled Teambreakers has just concluded its first week. I'm really enjoying this event so far, and I thought it would be fun to start a small series where I discuss trades that occurred each week. I'm going to talk about how the trade affects each team and just share my overall thoughts. I will also be taking a look at the evolving free agency list and making quick recommendations to players on which mons to acquire to round out their teams. If you are new to TDD or competitive Pokemon in general, and you have an interest in taking part in this off-season event, there's a link to our Discord in the description. We have a really great community, and I encourage anyone interested to check us out. But without further ado, let's get into this week's trades. First up, we have Lazadin and Hamsterwings. Hamsterwings has traded away Mr. Mime for Dusclops, and Lazadin chose to drop Chinchino into free agency for Tauros. On Hamster's side, I think this is a great trade. He swapped out a Trick Room setter for an even more reliable Trick Room setter, at the cost of some utility, but seeing as how he already used Mime in Season 2, I imagine he wants a new toy to play with. He's joked that his team is poised for a Glastrier pickup, and honestly I can't disagree. I think Eggpling better watch out. If Hamster does pick up Glastrier, he's going to have an extremely threatening Trick Room team with Hoopa Unbound, Stakataka, Porygon 2, Dragalge, and then of course Glastrier. On Lazadin's side, I think Mr. Mime is also a pretty good acquisition for him. He keeps the ability to set Trick Room, although his team doesn't really like it, and more importantly, Mime fits into his speed tiers better, with more flexible utility for crimes that he wishes to commit. As for the trade for Tauros, I think that's also pretty good for him, considering he gets an Intimidator if he chooses to have one. Next up, we have myself, Diggory, trading with Megalomemes. I chose to rid myself of Frostlass, and I stole Rotom Mow, while Megalomemes chose to trade out Frostlass immediately and pick up Moltres G from pre-rotation. I think this is pretty good for him, considering that if Megalomemes loses Rotom, it doesn't seem to hurt him that badly. He loses his offensive tool for water types, but he gains the offensive tool for everything. Seriously, this Pokemon is the official Deathbringer from Season 4, and it handles everything pretty well except fairies. He has Jirachi, which can handle fairies no problem. Moltres does especially well when paired with a healer, otherwise it only really has one chance to proc Berserk with a berry. He currently doesn't have any access to Heal Pulse, but he does have Wish Ally Switch with Jirachi. Moltres can run odd supportive sets with Snarl, Taunt, and U-Turn if you don't have the support of Berserk Sweeps, so I'm interested to see if Megalomemes makes any good use out of this Pokemon. As for myself, I dropped Frostlass for Rotom simply because I needed a water resist other than Simipour, which I would never actually bring to a match if I wasn't trying to get rid of it. Rotom offers great offensive stab for pretty much any other water type, which I realized I needed when I prepped loosely for Megalo's Suicune. Not much else to say there. Speaking of never bringing Simipour unless I'm trying to get rid of it, here we have me pawning off Simipour to WhiskeyTattoo. In return, I grabbed a superior water type, Poliwrath, with the one caveat being that I have one more fairy weakness now. Whiskey chose to not get rid of Simipour for some reason, perhaps because he didn't realize just how bad it is. Simipour is entirely redundant on his team and should never be brought up for Primarina. If I were him, I would have swapped this out for Sceptile, which was in free rotation at the time. His team could have used the grass type, seeing as it functions very differently from Cradily, which is his existing grass type. Ah well, I suppose there's always utility in keeping dead slots on your team to trade out later. Next up, we have Technovoid defeating me and taking Oricorio Bile from my C tiers. In return, he gave me type Null, and I also elected to make a side trade of Pangoro for my free agent Sceptile. Techno told me that he came into this match with the intention of giving away Hitmonlee for Oricorio, but Hitmonlee proved so useful and fun during our match that he had a change of heart. I'm honestly not sure why he wanted Oricorio in the first place, seeing as it's not that good of a Pokemon. I suppose it is a fire type which he lacks, but I think the real reason he picked it up is that he sees this as the safest time to try out dumb strats, as opposed to down the road in Season 5. As for myself, I could not have been happier with this trade. I honestly don't care for type Null, as it's a bulky normal type, which isn't really my style unless it's named Greedent, but what really excited me is the opportunity to get rid of Oricorio and Pangoro. There are two type redundancies that I have on my team, and I was able to pick up Sceptile, which gives me a great tool to handle water types other than Rotom. This proves useful as it's flexible whether or not I can bring a special or physical type to deal with waters, which proves, immediately useful against Steven in my next match. Spoilers, I guess. Our fourth and final trade involving me this week is the mutually beneficial one between Steven and I. Despite Heatran being an amazing Pokemon, I was extremely ready to get rid of it after using it for a full season, and I knew that Steven had his eyes on it. It's worth noting that I did consider trading my Mega Charizard X for his Tapu Fini, so that I could make better use of Misty Terrain to protect my physical attackers from burn, but that trade would have been significantly worse for Steven, and I wanted to keep things pretty friendly at this early stage in the offseason. Sylveon gives me pretty equal Fairy Bulk, and does also give me offensive and supportive options that you would get with any evolution. On Steven's end, honestly, what have I done? His SAA core is pretty gross now, with Feanor, Mega Venusaur, and Heatran. They all offer bulk and offense when played right, and I know for a fact that Steven will indeed play them right. I also want to note that I love Ditto on his team. Having the bulky mons that I just mentioned will invite setup offense from his opponents, which I know that Steven will just switch in Ditto and take revenge on them with their own boosts. Pretty scary stuff. Our penultimate trade of the week is between Friendship. That's right, it's Feanor and Poststructure trading out Barraskewda for Excadrill. For Feanor, I think this is great. He loses a Rain Sweeper and gains a Sandone with Tyranitar already on the team. This is a power couple in the making for sure. I think it's pretty funny, honestly, that Post brought Excadrill to this fight with the expectation that Feanor would bring Sand, and then Feanor leaves Tyranitar on the bench and just steals Excadrill after winning. Great stuff. As for Post's team, honestly, I don't really think this is that great for him. He does have two Swift Swimmers now, and a bulky Steel type that would enjoy weakened Fire type moves, so a Rain team might be on the horizon. That being said, he has no great way of setting Rain, and losing Excadrill is a bit sad as it was his only ground type. I think he got the raw end of this deal. Could this be enemy ship rearing its ugly head once more? We'll find out. Finally, we have our last trade of the week. Lazadin trades out Dragapult to Peanutscratch and takes Mega Gardevoir in return. Meanwhile, Peanut also drops Dragapult into free agency and grabs Mega Mawile from free rotation. On Lazadin's side, he does gain a strong special attacker, which I would say he kind of needs, but he did pick up his third fairy type. I'm honestly not sure that this was the best trade for him, but I think he's well aware of that. I will say, pivoting your team will sometimes take several trades in this event, so this could be the first of many benefiting him in the long run. As for Peanut, he trades out a Mega Fairy for a Mega Fairy, gaining Steel type in the process, as well as a deadly physical attacker. Great trade for Peanut all around. With Shaven's speed control, I think Mega Mawile could pose a great threat to opponents who aren't prepared to shut it down. And that concludes our trade analysis for the week. Now we come to the second half of our video, where I'm going to look at the free agent list and recommend trades to each team. Feel free to skip to yourself if you want, each team is going to be timestamped in the description. So looking at our new free rotation for the week, we have Rillaboom in S tier, Megalodios and Indeedee Female in A tier, Comfey, Pelipper, and Gliscor in B tier, and rounding out the bottom tier, we have Jinx, Charjabug, Chimecho, and Nidoqueen. Also on the list of the free agents released from teams last week, we have Dragapult, Frostlass, Pangoro, and Cinccino. I will say the S through B tiers have a lot of great mons up for grabs, but the C tiers kind of just have friend-shaped mons that you would only ever want in the offseason, with the exception of Nidoqueen, who is unironically very good. The first team up is Technovoid. Honestly, Techno's team is pretty solid already, and I don't see him switching out any of his S through Bs for free agents. Maybe he drops Gourgeist for something memey like Charjabug or Chimecho, but honestly I can't recommend it. Sorry Techno, but I've got nothing else for you. Next up, we've got Hamsterwings. I think Rillaboom could offer something to his team if he wanted to lean harder into the Trick Room. Rayquaza obviously doesn't function that well in the Trick Room, whereas Rillaboom's priority doesn't really care about speed control at all. He also has a few bulky mons like Porygon 2, Dusclops, and Stakataka that would appreciate the grassy terrain healing, not to mention the reduced power of Earthquakes for Stakataka. I will say, giving your opponent's Grassy Glide priority versus Gastrodon is a bit risky, but oh well. I'm pretty confident that Hamster would be able to play around this very well. It's also just funny for me to imagine him with Rillaboom considering he despises him. Next up, we've got Meteorbower. I honestly wouldn't change any of his S or A tiers as they're all pretty disgusting. 3 bulky mons and a Firewater Grass core in the hands of a former champion? Yikes. Maybe he could swap out Clefable for Comfey if he wants less redirection and more healing output for his bulky mons, but I'm not sure about this one. I think I showcased in Season 4 the benefit of priority healing on Scarfed Eruption Heatran, but honestly I think I would still prefer the redirection that comes with Clefable. I could also see Steven leaning more into a meme and acquiring Chargebug and maybe switching out Galvantula. Overall, his team is already very solid, and I don't have any strong recommends for him. Peanut's team has great typing in my opinion. He has his Firewater Grass Core in his S3Bs along with other threats like Mawile and Nihilego. If anything, I might switch out one of his C tiers for Nidoqueen to acquire some Ground Stab, because that's always nice to have. Probably he should drop Ariados or Thievul, whichever interests him less. As for my team, nothing really interests me that much. There are several mons that I like here, like Dragapult, Comfey, and Rillaboom, but none of them really mesh well with my team as is. Typing-wise, Diggersby for Nidoqueen might be a good trade for me as it gives me an offensive tool to deal with fairies and switches out a physical mon for a mixed attacker. As for Lazadin, I would switch out his A-tier Mecha. I know that he just got it from Peanut, and he probably wants to get some good use out of it, so yeah, I think I would just go win a match with it and then switch it out for Megalodios. With that trade, he would keep his Psychic special attacker and swap Fairy for Dragon Stab, which is all around fantastic to have on any team. Gladios also has an incredibly deep move pool and would fill gaps he finds in whatever crimes he thinks of that week. I was also thinking that Articuno G for Gliscor might do him some good, but perhaps he is tired of using ground flying types. Now we come to Poststructure, and I hate to say this, but on paper I think that Post's team would benefit from Pelipper. I don't know how he feels about this, but once you have a couple of swift swimmers like Barraskewda and Quillfish, selling your soul to a rain team might look like a pretty good option. If he wants, he could probably get rid of Toxapex to balance out the bad karma from picking up Pelipper. If he doesn't want to lean to rain, and I wouldn't blame him, then switching out Barraskewda for Comfey is kind of a no-brainer. His team lacks any type of fairy, and just like I said with priority healing on Eruption, priority healing on Dragon Energy Regidrago sounds absolutely disgusting to me. Next up we have Stormysunshine. Stormy really impressed me this week with her Mew play versus Techno, and I hope to see her explore more options with Mew in the future. Honestly, I don't see any standout weak spots on her team right now. I will say that she lacks any traditional cores, notably missing a Fairy type from Fantasy Core and a Fire type from Firewater Grass. But aside from Comfey, there aren't any real good ones up for grabs at the moment. I think that Indeedee is something of an interesting option for her, as it could set up Expanding Force Mew and also deny priority attackers from Gimpy and Dracovish, much like OJ did in Season 4. If she were to pick that up, I think it would probably be better to trade out Mega Sableye instead of Hydreigon, simply because it keeps your Mega slot open, which feels pretty advantageous in this kind of event. Looking at OJ, I see strong pillars of Trick Room on his team already, with Orbeetle, Mega Audino, and Jellicent being great setters, and Melmetal and Colossal being strong threats in Trick Room. If I were him, I would drop Mega Lopunny for Indeedee Female. Perhaps he's a bit tired of Psychic Terrain after Season 4, but having redirection to a Trick Room setup is very good, and then the Psychic Terrain blocking priority would help ensure that he moves first within Trick Room. Alternatively, he could stray away from the Trick Room setup and lean into his speedy mons such as Kyurem White and Lopunny. In this case, I would recommend him getting rid of Jellicent for Comfey or even Pelipper. Colossal and Nidoking are the only mons on his team who would not appreciate rain, and I think that Poststructure proved last season that Melmetal does not really need Trick Room to be strong. And if he can be tanky in Sun, then he sure as hell can be tanky in Rain. WhiskeyTattoo's team is a bit of a mix-up right now between Trick Room and Tailwind. He's got Mega Manectric and Crobat that offer insane speed control, and he has some strong hitters that can function with Tailwind or Trick Room, like Banded Surfetch'd and Specs Primarina. If he does intend to lean into Trick Room, I would look to release Mega Manectric, as it's the less flexible mon between itself and Crobat. Among the 3 A tiers up for grabs, I think Indeedee would be the best trade for this. Redirection alongside Snorlax is always a good call, and I think the Psychic Terrain can help him avoid Fake Out pressure. Points against this pickup would be that Cresselia notably does not benefit from Psychic Terrain because of Levitate, and it might be a bit anti-synergistic to nullify your own first impressions from Surfetch'd. Among the C tiers, I would also consider losing Simipour for Pangoro. I think 4x weaknesses in the C tier are less likely to be prepped around, and Surfetch'd is the only other fairy weakness that he has apparently right now. Your team is also pretty lacking in Steel type, so I would look at stealing one from your opponent sometime soon. Moving on to Feanor. Building a sand team, I see. Honestly, nothing immediately stands out to me. On one hand, Greninja being Dark Water seems slightly redundant typing-wise, next to Tyranitar and Empoleon, both of which are better in Sand. But that being said, Greninja is a Protean Pokemon, so I suppose typing matters less. I think Liepard is a bit odd for your team. Most people would run a Focus Sash on this, but with Sandstorm, you won't have really any chance to use Focus Sash. It's not going to live more than one turn, and so I'm going to break the mold here and say Screw the free rotation, and I think you should steal a C tier from Whiskey, seeing that he has both Cradily and Palace Stand, which are good in Sandstorm. Next up, we have our newcomer, Megalomemes. As I said in the trades part of this video, your recent pickup of Moltres Galar is most useful when paired with a healer. And well, would you look at that, the other half of my Season 4 dynamic duo has appeared. Comfy, I think, would be great for you. Healing up your Moltres to start stacking those Berserk boosts is incredibly powerful for sweeps, not to mention that Comfy would also give you a Fairy type which your team currently is lacking. Unironically, I think Rillaboom would also be another great pickup for you, as the Boom, Suicune, Chandelier core is pretty great. And assuming that you already have picked up Comfy, you can start those floral healing boosts up to 66% priority in grassy terrain. Sorry to plug my Season 4 team so much, but frankly it was really fun to use and I recommend the synergies because they're pretty easy to play around. There aren't many mons that wouldn't appreciate a +3 66% heal. Seeing that I have already recommended Comfy to several people, I do recommend keeping Rillaboom in mind as a good backup trade if you want to round out your Firewater Grass core. Second to last, we have Eggpling. Currently, I think Eggpling has the most complete Trick Room team within Teambreakers. The only mon within your S through B tiers that doesn't fit super well is Ninetales Alola, and that's simply due to its speed tier. Suicide leading it with a Light Clay Aurora Veil still has plenty of viability, as once it dies, you can bring in a Trick Room mon to take advantage of the Trick Room that your other lead has just set up. Making your opponent choose whether to deny Trick Room or Aurora Veil on turn 1 is pretty great, and I think that being said, if you don't like Ninetales, you can probably switch it out for Gliscor or Comfy. They're both pretty fast as well, but Gliscor provides you with Ground Stab, which can help relieve pressure from the Fire Steel types that are going to threaten Glastrier, and Comfy's always solid. Honestly, your team's already really solid, so I'm not sure if any pickup is necessary here. And last but not least, we have Plkj, the Trapper himself. I'm going to put a disclaimer here to say that I have a pretty opposite playstyle from yours, so you can take everything I say here with a grain of salt. I don't see much use for having 2 Shadow Attackers, and I would probably switch out Gothitelle for Indeedee. Basically, you can gain a normal typing to help redirect Shadow Balls away from Victini and Gengar, and then I think Indeedee also offers a lot of the same support functionality that Gothitelle does. It's also worth noting that your team lacks traditional cores, so maybe look for a Grass type to pick up or a Steel type. And that concludes our free agent analysis for the week. I know I recommended Comfy and Indeedee to several people, so I'm excited to see Violence break out over them. The C tiers this week were a bit lacking with the exception of Nidoqueen, but I would also love to see people find niches for mons like Jinx and Chimecho, as I have encountered sets for them in random doubles before. As I conclude this video, I want to encourage people to leave feedback for this in the comments. This was my very first attempt at a TDD analysis video, and the formula is still a little rough at this point. So please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. My channel is pretty young and it could definitely use the support. But with that, I am looking forward to seeing you all out on the battlefield. Have a great rest of your week.